By the end of 2026, probably 80 to 90% of new content on the web, some estimate, will be just AI generated. People are using ChatGPT today for a lot of their deepest, darkest thoughts. Do you really want advertisers to see what you're saying to them?
I think that's very important. There's been such a big argument in the last decade on data privacy.
The business model of Web 2 is so broken where you don't even get the best results when you search on Google. You get whoever pays the most.
You're competing against such massive tech giants that have been around for decades and decades.
In the AI space, we want to be that storage layer for a place where everything is decentralized, agents to agents.
Hi everyone, my name is Lana Magzumi and I'm the co-host of the Tech It or Leave It podcast powered by Luna PR. I am joined by our CEO and founder, Nikita Sachdev-Lord, who is the CEO and founder of Luna PR. And we are super excited to have Clara on the podcast, who is the founding officer and director of the Filecoin Foundation. Welcome, Clara, to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be on this podcast.
Thank you for coming, and your first guest today. So we're kicking it off strong.
Amazing.
So you just finished up a panel discussion. We dragged you over here, and you were talking about AI agents and kind of integrity within that. Can you kind of explain to us and touch on what are the key takeaways you found from today's panel discussion?
Yeah, actually, the topic of AI and content integrity is what brought me into Web3 in the first place. I've spent most of my career actually looking at thorny internet issues that a lot of them bottled up from Web 2 problems of data being owned by major tech companies. And I've worked on issues ranging from foreign influence operations to countering homegrown extremism, how terrorists today are using social media to recruit and radicalize people. And a lot of people's biggest fears with AI really comes down to how do we represent the truth online today? Who gets to be that voice? And why do they get to be the voice? We're going to see a whole era of the equivalent of SEO hacking when it comes to how people are producing content today on the web with just AI to AI communication. And by the end of 2026, probably 80 to 90% of new content on the web, some estimate, will be just AI generated. So people want to verify and say, is this actually a human or a bot? And how do we make sure there's that degree of still new thought and creation that happens? Because today people used to fear AI and now they're really embracing it in all kinds of production. Some people use them in efficient ways that are less benign, but there are moments where you can imagine you get a cybersecurity attack and it might be from an AI. And most companies want to brace for that future and make sure that they have the right security and means to really validate that they are the voice of whatever they say and that they're not misrepresented.
So Clara, what is Filecoin doing to tackle that?
Yeah, so Filecoin is the world's largest decentralized storage network. We have data centers all around the world run by entrepreneurs. So imagine an Airbnb network, but instead of people, we're hosting data. And we don't own any of the data centers, but these entrepreneurs get to innovate to make data centers customizable to different kinds of needs, from enterprise data to hot storage and retrieval to all kinds of cold archival storage. If people have massive data sets that are really expensive, they don't want to keep being handcuffed to egress fees and keeping everything on AWS, they have that option to really port over and fully own that data and how much they spend on it versus prices that could fluctuate. Even in the last few months alone, when there was tariffs coming from the US, a lot of companies were worried about, a 3 or 5% tax on cloud is really expensive. And you can't do that with a decentralized storage network. There is no central entity, right? And so you can think about a lot more ability to brace for economic headwinds if you are consuming a lot of data today. But my favorite part about decentralized storage is the very nature of how it's built. We can actually validate and verify the source of data coming from the point of upload. And you can actually track it in a public and transparent way. And I think that's the most exciting part because we're going to see a lot more accountability from policymakers wanting to see transparency in AI. That's already happening in the EU and many regions of the world. And companies are going to have to figure out how to do that in a way that's something that they can't do today with centralized cloud. Because a lot of that is private and closed. And we're going to see a much more open web and open models And I think that's going to be really exciting to see a ton of players in the Web3 space be able to do that. And Filecoin really allows you to, again, verify from the point of upload how content is changed over time. So let's just say you're a journalist, you're taking a photo, and you want to verify that that actually came from the source of a camera. You can do that today with Filecoin. We've worked with different kinds of news agencies and even media publications to verify that that content hasn't been altered and came from that source. And they do it at the point of upload. So if someone says, I need to prove that you actually own that data, you can show that. And I think that's going to be more and more important because there's going to be people that recycle and use AI models. There's going to be content creators that want to have ownership of their own words. They want to make sure that no one's representing or pretending to be you online and misrepresenting your voice.
It also helps individuals that have given consent to their data, right? So you're able to track whether the consent was given or not.
Exactly.
I think that's very important. There's been such a big argument in the last decade on data privacy usage. So are you guys also tackling that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think that's a huge part of our work is really this human rights element of who gets to censor information or own information online. A lot of our initial protocol, which was called IPFS, and then Filecoin is a separate protocol, but built by the same founder, Juan Benet, who wrote the original white paper, was around how do we make sure that we can really have a public internet where everyone can access key information online and that it's not gatekept by large monopolies that choose who can actually access information, or it becomes a pay-as-you-play model. In a more distributed open internet, you can have money go back directly to content creators or people that produce it without that intermediary present. But you also need a way to store the data and prove ownership. And also the other thing that we're also we think is deeply important is the cost of data. We're seeing just a rise in how much data people consume and have to store. And that's only growing. People, a lot of times, don't want to delete their data. If you think about this in the era of self-driving cars, every single self-driving car may produce up to 1 terabyte of data per hour. And if they get into an accident and they want to look at what happened with all the data that came through this vehicle, they have to store it somewhere. Yeah. And that cost can be hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. Right, and so we have a pretty standard low-cost way for cold archival storage if people want to store that path. We also allow for hot retrieval of different kinds of data if you need quick access, and that ability to verify, I think, is going to be so important as we're seeing more and more lack of transparency of where data is stored. And I just spoke on the panel around an example of OpenAI a few months ago rolling out ChatGPT memory, where people are using ChatGPT today for a lot of their deepest, darkest thoughts. But do you really want advertisers to see what you're saying to them? Right? Yeah. Those are really private things. And we're seeing experiences where people are interacting with the web and agents in a more deep and personal way. And if that's just used and weaponized for malicious intent for capital gain, I think that's very bad for the world and a really bad precedent to set for users that are using the internet in a good way.
I can see definitely your massive passion when it comes to content integrity and human rights and kind of the overlink into that. On a more personal note, I would love to know, where did this passion come from? Like, was there something that kind of happened that you're like, I really need to get into this. This is going to be now what I do for it?
Yeah, I think since I was very young, I've had a part of me that has always wanted to solve inequality in this world. Okay. I think a lot of people, there's a quote by Mark Twain. Yeah. There are 2 most important days of your life: the day you're born and the day you know why. And I think I knew my why really early. I was like, there's so much complexity of problems in this world. I grew up in the backyard of Silicon Valley, where I saw so much innovation happen around me for the 1% of the world that could afford it. And the internet was really this leverage point I had that I felt was unique, where you can today do so much on the internet, give people access to courseware at MIT for free to learn across borders, right? And that's not something that was previously possible. A lot of institutions and what is considered elite in this world were gatekept by people already in power. And so for me, I said, I'm not able to solve all inequality, but if I can solve this niche issue of information inequality, I think that's a really big, important step to make sure that people can get the most trustworthy information online. So my entire career has been focused on this very mission. And I was drawn to decentralized storage because it's the crux of the problem of why we don't have trustworthy information on the web today. The business model of Web 2 is so broken where you don't even get the best results when you search on Google. You get whoever pays the most to get those PR or advertising hits. And then a lot of what we see today, even in the influencer space, I live in Miami, we see a lot of that. A lot of people are like, what's a bot? What's a real user? Is this person just doing it for clout? Right? And so we're already seeing that. And today, the biggest question a lot of people ask is, how do we verify if they're real users?
Authenticate when you have seen hundreds and thousands of
How do we verify that this person actually went to this coffee shop to take an advertisement versus AI-generated versions of that? And so for me, a trustworthy web really stems from the ability to do content addressing right and to prove with a unique hash, which is what Filecoin and IPFS allows, and also to allow for resilience of that data to always be accessed. A lot of people forget that at the end of the day, storage is someone pays an AWS bill in Web 2 somewhere. And when you see a 404 error, it's because no one's paying for that. And we allow for a network of resilient storage where it's always upkept. I think the average lifespan for most websites is just 2.5 years. That's what one study showed, right? And so we think the internet today is just as important as a public library of the world, as physical libraries in our backyards. And everyone should have access to critical historical data. Reporters who are writing news articles, they should be able to access information from the past versus have it be erased. There are governments who sometimes delete data because it's inconvenient for their political positions, even though previously it was said to be open for everyone to access, right? So we've done programs like that. One program called Democracy's Library is really around backing up all these public data sets governments have put out, because those are so important years from now to make sure there isn't a central point of failure. And even in the US, the state of Maine, for an entire year, their IT system failed its people, where the IT system went down and people couldn't access critical court records because they were all online and the system was no longer accessible. And so they had basic things they couldn't access. And being able to back up that data and also allow people to have resiliency to access it and also verify this is not actually someone recreating the data or spoofing it. This is authenticated. I think those are so important elements we're going to see more and more of in a world where we're going to see more data being created and more easily because of AI. And
AI. Clara, you can really see the passion when you talk. I really love it. And it's nice because like you're competing against such massive tech giants that have been around for decades and decades. And you've absolutely nailed it in the Web3 space with data storage. I believe you're number one, right? Like Filecoin's the number one in data storage in the Web3 space. Yeah. I really hope that you become number one globally, and you just had some massive announcements that I think is another stride towards that. Talk to us a little bit about the partnerships you've created.
Yeah, so a lot of times people ask what kind of data is stored on Filecoin, and you can imagine there's actually 18 different verticals in storage alone. So if you don't understand the verticals, it's really hard for me to answer your question, but Filecoin, which has been around for more than a decade as a project, is always about creating an open marketplace where people can build all kinds of abilities to store data in different storefronts. So one example is we have a great company named Sriracha. Just last month, we helped them also co-announce a partnership with Blue Sky. So Blue Sky is a decentralized social media platform. A lot of people know it because it had original ties with Twitter and Jack Dorsey. But they're backing up all their data on Filecoin today. And so we can see it in the use case of social media sites. We also announced a partnership with Avalanche C-Chain. So if users today are building on Avalanche in the Web3 space, they can also easily store data immediately on Filecoin. We've also done the chain archival backup of projects like Solana. So it's really great to see decentralized storage really plug and play into Web3 because those are the ingredients we were built from. It's great to see it historically in places like NFTs. If you own an NFT, you're already storing a Filecoin and IPFS. But also in the AI space, which I'm really excited about, this is an area we're thinking deeply about. We want to be that storage layer for a place where everything is decentralized. Agents to agents are creating data. Where is that being stored? And when you think about the concept of data DAO and shared data ownership, that's not something that centralized centralized storage companies can do today. And we can easily build that in with the right kinds of companies going after those areas where you can have multiple companies own a set of data, because data is going to be more expensive and nobody wants to be the one footing the bill. And also there's probably legal complexities when you own data that might be sensitive or whatnot. And so I think that's going to be really interesting to see this world of fractionalized data ownership that's already happening with more and more use of AI agents and AI models.
Clara, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I think we both learned probably a lot today too.
Yeah.
Sorry, we had to keep it a short one. I feel like we got to talk to you about this.
We're keeping these like a little
No, that was like short and sweet.
That was short and sweet. I think we got
you. So just tell us what else you have coming up in the pipeline. We want some alpha.
Yeah, I mean, I would say this year alone, we have over 200 startups building on Filecoin, and we're really helping them drive their product market fit and client adoption. So I think AI is going to be a huge focus for us because that's the future of data.
Yes, for sure. Are most of these projects that are building on Filecoin AI related?
A lot of them are. Some of them are just building the plumbing that you need. Imagine you have tons of data on AWS and you want to port over to the decentralized web and decentralized storage. We have a company called Akave that's building the rails to make that super easy. So a lot of times, like, storage is just infrastructure to be boring, but a lot of times we're also creating the railings around it. We've done partnerships with 10 different AI companies the last year alone. Just around different integrations, from helping Bagel store their AI models to working with AI agents to looking at, decentralized compute and decentralized GPUs with Aether and even Theoric. So there's so many ways that we can collaborate to make everything more decentralized in both Web 2 and Web 3.
Love that. That's a great closing statement right there. Thank you, Clara, so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's great.